Welcome back to Bread and Butter, everybody, where we are serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement in episode 103. I'm Doc McButt, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Tito. Tito, how are you doing?
Doc, I'm doing fantastic.
And listeners, we have a very special returning guest, but for those of you who could be new and don't know who this guest is, Dawn, how are you and who are you?
Hello. I am doing well. It's always a pleasure being on the show. I enjoy it very much, so thank you for having me back. And I guess for those who don't know me, I am Dawn. I go by DragonRider. You probably have seen me if you've watched any of the competitive Hearthstone official broadcasts over this year and some of last year. So, yeah, I don't know who else I am. I'm a caster.
You're the president of Amberflake Gaming. You have multiple podcasts which you're hosts of.
Yes. I'm just going to say this last few weeks has felt like a few months, and this last year has felt like several years. So apologies if my brain is very fried, because I'm very tired.
And since about April 2000, it's felt like about a decade and a half.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, Demon Hunter was devastating when it first came out. I think we've never recovered.
It's fair.
So today we'll be our topic will be reviewing some of the lessons. So Dawn comes on the show, and we usually have a lesson. Well, most of the time we have lessons. Sometimes she comes on for other reasons, but sort of something that you can look to improve your Hearthstone game, some basics. And today we're going to just review the ones we went over in 2024 to get you ready for 2025. But Dawn, what have you been doing? Excuse me, inside of Hearthstone?
Inside of Hearthstone has been a little bit lacking, but I have been playing THL. I say lacking as I'm in 3 different THL. What are they called? See,
leagues?
My brain's not ready.
Or not
for
leagues,
this.
series.
Series, yes, that's the word. I was like, divisions? That's not right. Nope. So I do play the Pro Series, the Legacy Series, and Hero, which is Last Hero Standing. So those are the 3 that I'm in.
And her pro team kicked my pro team's butt this month. This week. Normally we have some pretty good games, and it's usually pretty close between our teams, but you guys just steamrolled us this time. And I was looking at it. So I played Yagatari, who's on your team, and I looked at the history, and the first time I played her, I swept. The second time I went 3-1. So, I go in, I'm fairly confident. I'm like, I feel like I got her number, and she just rolled me hard. Like I wasn't even in any of 3 games. It was just like, as they say in baseball, good morning, good evening, good night. It was over that fast. So, but yeah, you guys dominated. So congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, they kicked some butts. It was very nice to see. Been really proud of the ladies team. We've been killing it this season. So, been good.
How about yourself, Doc? What have you been doing inside this world of Hearthstone?
Mainly a lot of BGs. Just been trying to do different comps. Having variable success. I've been using my reroll tokens, even though I was wanting to not use them for science reasons, I guess. But I have just found they help me have more fun because I can reroll away from a hero that I don't like. I don't have the Pass Plus, so I don't get a free roll or anything like that, and I only have 2 hero options. So being able to roll a hero feels pretty good. Quillboar's fun. I've had a lot of fun with Beetles. Beetles has been pretty nuts. I have tried doing Naga stuff. Haven't been super successful with Naga stuff. Haven't really tried Undead either. But I just like where BG's is at right now. I just can't wait for the BG's mini set where we get some kind of new gimmick or rule to work with. I've also been doing THL. And as is tradition, I've not been doing well in THL. I never have. But this week I did do the best I've done all season. I went 2-3. But game 2 was the most hilarious thing, and I feel so bad for my opponent. They still won anyway, so it's fine. But I was playing aggro or swarm shaman and played patches turn 1. How many of the pirates do you guys want to guess were on the top of my library?
3.
4.
Oh my gosh.
And then
Fantastic.
I drew, is it Cookie's the tourist, right?
Yeah.
I drew Cookie, and so then I got 2/2 drops, or I got 3/2 drops on turn 2 because I traded into their minion. It was just the absolute nuts. And then I drew a card on my 3rd turn, and then the draw on my 4th turn was the rest of my pirates, and then I had also had the pirate that when I tutored it for it somehow. It was the shaman spell. I can't remember the name. It has like the dinosaur on it and someone writing it, I think, where you buff a minion, and then if you have a minion of the same type in your deck, you draw it. So it drew the one that buffs the pirates when they attack. And so I had a board full of pirates, and I just 1-on-6. It was pretty funny. Like, in the middle of the game, my opponent just messaged me. They're like, "Wow," and I just replied, "Nuts," because that's never happened to me before. It was pretty funny. Game 3, it was weird. I played Mech Rogue. I'm not a super big fan of Mech Rogue. I haven't played it in a really long time, so I'm just not used to like how it plays. I had a really weird Ziliax line, which was, I think, my opening hands and everything sucked, but I had the Ziliax that it doubles its attack, but it deals 3 damage to you. But somehow I gave it lifelink, which might have been from one of the microbots that I magnetized to it. And so it deal 3 damage to me, but then I'd heal it back and it was fine.
Lifesteal.
And then I was like, yeah, I said lifelink, didn't I?
Yeah, you used a magic term. It's okay.
I just got magic on the brain. I couldn't tell you guys why. But I was feeling really, really confident. I was feeling really good. My opponent got me down super, super, super far. I had like maybe less than 12 life, and so giving this big taunted Ziliax, because I also gave it taunt, I was like, perfect. I'm gonna have a life total for a while, and I can come back and win if they can't remove this Ziliax in any kind of super efficient way. It was like turn 7 or turn 8 when this had happened, I think. And then they played Amanthul, and I was like, he has Shroud. He can't be touched. No, because it's not a targeted ability. It's just a poof, they're gone. And I only had 2 creatures out, so they just got poofed gone. So I was like, okay, well, I kind of deserved that, but I played to my outs, I guess. Yeah, Hearthstone's fun. THL is always a good time. Very good community over there. I've been playing THL on and off since like 2015, so it's just fun playing THL again. But yeah, that's my life inside Hearthstone. How about yours, Tito?
Well, I also have been doing a lot of those similar things. I already talked about how I got rolled this week in THL, and that's fine. Me and Pilot do duos team, and we did win this week, and we played pretty well. We beat you know how some people have names like usernames, and like you recognize it, you think of it all the time, but then you're like, how do I say this? We played Vasores and Neverland, and they were really, really, really good games, and some interesting. I did get to in the last game, we were struggling to stay alive, or not the last game, the game before last, the 4th game, I think. We were playing the Discover Hunter. No, we were playing Grunter Hunter. I'm sorry, Grunter Hunter. And we were trying to figure out how we could do punch cards and get through their board because we had like 4 health. And I was like, no, just discover. Let's just find the always another Yorgamer. And we just found that card and won through that way. So Pilot has to deal with the fact that I was right for once when he didn't think about it. But outside of that, I've been playing a lot of Battlegrounds too. I think I'm between 4,000 and 4,500, which is I can be a good Battleground player. I just usually don't put the time in, but there's been a lot of times when I'm doing other things, and I've been displaced from my office quite a bit this week because of work being done to repair the damage that we've talked about. So I I just played some Battlegrounds while I'm watching Rebels, so it's been fun. Hearthstone regular standard. I've been doing all right. I think I'm 4,500 right now. And I did fall a bit playing weird decks or some other decks, but I've been playing Asteroid Shaman. Asteroid Shaman is back. I know Zacho says it is a boosted deck because it's winning well, he said I think it's winning because of matchups versus Control Warrior and Armor Warlock, but I have not seen a lot of them, and I'm still winning. I think it's a good deck for now. I'm going to enjoy it while it's good. I still been playing Discover Hunter 2. That's been a lot of fun, but I'm really enjoying it. So I just can't get enough asteroids. It's just been my jam. I don't know why. It just satisfies me in a way that I can't explain. It's just, I don't like plagues really. I don't like, other decks that are similar to this, but asteroids just gets me. So we're there. But DragonRider, how about outside of Hearthstone? What have you been doing?
Feels like a ton. Just in
Too
December
much,
alone. Yeah, usually. I've been trying to cut back a little bit. So actually both of the podcasts that I do are kind of on hiatus until Dr. 3 will be on hiatus until after the new year, and I think this week after Christmas, like between Christmas and New Year's, we'll be back with Roundtable. But so been cutting back a little bit on stuff I've been doing, but still doing a lot. I'm working full time now, or at least mostly full time. Like just under the 40 hours kind of thing. So, trying to do that. Gotta make money. This month was also Worlds for Hearthstone, so was casting that and getting ready for that. And getting ready for holiday stuff. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on. And then now that I'm past the casting and getting ready for the new year, I'm kind of prepping some stuff for 2025 and like setting my goals and intentions and that kind of stuff and getting ready for the new year with AFG and all that stuff. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on. Just a couple of things, just a few minor things, nothing big or anything.
And hopefully you get paid for casting in a timely manner this time around.
Yeah. No, they're pretty good. They're pretty good about it. So, yeah.
Doc, how about yourself? What have you been doing outside of the game?
Just playing board games with my fiance and her brother. I've been playing a new game to us, Scythe. It's a resource management game. It's pretty fun. It's like Catan with extra steps, kind of, is like the easiest way I can explain it. We've also been playing Everdell, which is like a woodland creature resource management game. It's also a card game technically too. And from Dano from Squelch's recommendation, I've been playing some ESO, and it's pretty fun. I'm liking Elder Scrolls Online. I got a buddy of mine that I played it with once before to make a new character and play it with me. And we're going to try to make time to do that like once a week. Also been playing some Mass Effect 2, because as much as I love the Mass Effect trilogy, I just have never been able to fully replay the first Mass Effect game since my initial time I've beaten it. So now that Squelch is on to Mass Effect 2, I'm playing Mass Effect alongside them. Been playing it on Insanity though, which I've never done, so I've wanted to do that, and it's hard. it's not like easy. It's a lot more having to be tactical instead of me just being able to run and gun and do stuff. So it's been a nice challenge. Makes me play the game in a way I've never had to play it before. So I've been enjoying that. I've also been playing some TFT still. I'm almost silver 2, which isn't super great, but that's around the highest I've ever been in TFT, I think. I just really like this TFT set. It's just a lot of fun. And there's some cosmetics that I'm grinding resources for so I can roll them. I'm almost at the spot where I can just get it because of the amount of times I've rolled. Because TFT has mythic skins or whatever that you can get. And if you don't get them, you save this currency. And so I've saved this currency for a long time, and there's a skin that I really want to get. So I'm trying to get the last one I need so that I can get the skin. And listeners, last week I told you all about our pet goldfish that we got at White Elephant Gift Exchange. Sadly, those goldfish are no longer with us. We got them a new tank. We put in the dechlorinator. So we think it's a combination of either the water being too cold, which we don't understand because we got a thermometer and it said it was the same temperature. Or it could be that just our water's a little bit harder than we thought it was. So we need a more dechlorinator in there than what like the recommendation says for the tank size. So we need to do more like research into that. I also watched a Batman short film that I helped my brother-in-law's friend make as his last project before he leaves on his mission trip for his church. It's called Punchline. It's on YouTube somewhere. I forget what YouTube channel it's on, but it's called Punchline. It's fun. Kids, the director who also played the Joker, is extremely talented. He's just trying to do too many things right now as far as like jobs on the set. And limitation with only having like a fixed lens camera and everything, but it looks really good. You can tell like he knows what he's trying to do and he has like a very specific vision. So very excited to see what he does when he gets back from his trip and goes to film school. It's just been an overall good time. It's the holiday season, so listeners, happy holidays. And I was doing the dishes today or tonight before the show, and my neighbor rang our doorbell. And she gave us a Christmas card and a little bag, and it had some candy in it, and it had some tangerines. Just really nice. We've never talked to her before, but she's just a sweet little old lady. She came up, told me her name and her husband's name, and she's like, "Yeah, we're the last original members of this neighborhood, which means we're old." And it's just like, you're so cute. Like, you don't have to say that. Like, it's nice to know their names now. Because the husband, he has it doesn't run. I'm pretty sure it has flat tires, but has like a really, really old, I think like 50s or 60s, like Ford truck just sitting in their driveway. So I want to hear the story about that sometime because I love talking to people older than me and especially like elderly people, just getting to hear their stories and everything. It's just always been something that's been interesting to me.
Well, that's why we have just a guy on sometimes.
Yeah. He is older than me, but I wouldn't say he's elderly.
Now we're going to find out if he actually listens to the show or not.
Love you, just a guy. Yeah, that's been my life outside of Hearthstone. How about you?
All right there, Doc.
Yeah, I'm good.
So I got a job offer just before Thanksgiving. And I, accepted it. And I was all excited. I'm like, I'm ready to go. And they're like, yeah, it's going to take 2 to 3 months. And because I have to go through, some processing. And then I have to go through, it's a government job or it's a government adjacent job or something. So, and I have to get a clearance and do all this stuff. And it's taking forever. And my unemployment's run out. So, I'm like, I just want to start now. And they're like, you can't. So it's been kind of frustrating. And then I'm nervous about passing the security clearance. Not that I'm a bad guy, but because, being unemployed for a while and some other financial mishaps in the past, those are blips that could potentially make you a security risk. And whether or not it doesn't really matter. Like, they're like, hey, they're afraid that if people owe money or whatnot, that somebody might be like, hey, we'll pay off your debts if you like spy on our government for us and all that. So they always look into this kind of things. So I thought I was going to be fine, but also just having the anxiety of not having a job and like putting all my eggs in this basket for this job is nerve wracking. And so, you get those thoughts in your head, like, what if something goes wrong? What if I just owe a little too much money or, whatnot or whatever like that. But I'm like, but I'm a veteran. I got all this other stuff. So I should be fine. But what if it's wrong? So then last week, not to get political because I won't, but our government decided to wait till the last minute to pass the government budget so that the government stays open. And if it didn't, I'm like, well, I'm waiting for a clearance, which is done by government employees. So I'm just like, this shutdown might directly affect me. But they passed it and it didn't matter because I found out on Saturday and then I got cleared. I'm good. I start in 2 weeks. I will be employed again. I am employed again. I just haven't started working yet. In 2 weeks or so, or the 13th or something like that, I will be an employee again. I will be getting a paycheck. Once as they say, I'm not counting on it fully until I have Ascen's chair and paycheck in bank. But we are pretty excited about that. That might affect show scheduling. So if we have a blip or two in January, it's only because I am transitioning a bit to a new job where I'm going to be living a couple hours away from my house during the week. So I don't anticipate any schedule changes, but just in case there are, I promise you we're not going on a long hiatus or anything like that. We're just going to be kind of adjusting to that. And Doc, I think you said we'll be good if we have to record on a different night. So we'll figure that out. But yay, after I've been unemployed since the end of May. It sucks. But it doesn't suck anymore because we're about to work. And I'm going to work with, not directly at the same department, but with a friend of mine and also another person who was in my Warcraft guild because of that other friend of mine. So somebody else I know. And it's just exciting. I'm very excited. But I've also been excited about patch 31.2.2. And that came out this week, and last week. And not a lot was changed. I'll go over real quick. They changed Sonya Water Dancer to no longer replay spells. It's just minions. So after you play one class minion, get a copy of it. So spell, you're not going to get 6 damage, 6 damage, 6 damage, 6 damage anymore for them. So they have Rogue always survives. Rogue always finds a way. So there will be ways that they will still use Sonya. I don't think Sonya is a dead card, but it's not as egregious as it was before. They've also changed the Pylon module in Ziliax, which instead of giving your other minions +1 attack and +1 health, it just gives them +1 attack, making it a little easier to clear a board early on in the game, which is a great change. They also changed Sigil of Skydiving, which now only summons 2 pirates instead of 3. Even though this is a Demon Hunter card, this is a change because of Shaman. And this is one of the dangers of these. This isn't a dual class card, but because of the Taurus and all that. So Demon Hunter is paying for the sins of Shaman. But the decks are still good. There's still plenty of good decks there. Sigil of Skydiving, not as good as it used to be, so that might kind of fade out, but there's still plenty to do. And Crystal Cluster from Druid. It went from 6 mana to 7 mana. It could have went to 8. It could have went to 9. I think it still would have been fine. Druid still does Druid things. Now, anytime they nerf something like these cards, the popularity of those decks dip until, some streamer decides that I'm going to still make it good, and then it comes back. But Dungar Druid's still fine. This doesn't really change all that much, but it is a beat slower, and you can possibly get there. They also have nerfed a couple cards in Wild. They nerfed Dark Glare, which used to be after your hero takes damage, refresh a mana crystal. Now it's if your hero took damage this turn, refresh 3 mana crystals. So it's no longer this kind of like infinite engine of mana. And they changed the Demon Seed that went from 10 damage per questline stage to 12 damage per questline stage. The real problem here is a card that's in Standard, Hellstone, which no one ever plays in Standard, but obviously becomes a problem in Wild because I believe it is 1 mana and it restores all your health all the damage you've taken this turn. It restores that. So that is a very powerful card with the Demon Seed. And they also buffed Talgath, which was the rogue legendary. It used to be a 4 mana 4/4. Now it's a 3 mana 3/3. And this is the one that has undamaged enemy minions take double damage. Combo, get a backstab. This was fun in theory crafting. This was the last time anyone's ever seen this card played. The only other time I've ever seen this card played, I believe, had this guy Funky Monkey was trying to do something with it. Outside of that, nobody plays this card. Nobody's still playing this card. It's a cool concept, but it's really not all that. Now, I like the concept of this card because undamaged enemy minions take double damage. Sounds really fun if they have the Brain Masseuse on board. But outside of that, it's a very specific case, and I don't think it's going to be all that good. But the meta has shifted, and we've seen a lot less Dungar Druid, which is good. Asteroid Shaman's become very good. And I don't know, the meta feels more balanced to me, but I know a lot of people have lost decks that they like to play, so they're unhappy. But I've enjoyed it. I've been having fun. How about yourself? I know you guys haven't been able to play that much Standard, but have you noticed any difference since you've been playing? How about you, Doc?
I haven't noticed a big difference. Because I mean, I really only really been jamming Discover Hunter on ladder. But I mean, it seems fine. Like, if they've made a change and I can't tell a difference, then that means that at where I'm playing at, it wasn't that polarizing of a thing to deal with. Where I'm at, like, no one's doing Sonya stuff. Because I think I'm at like 6 or 7x. So no one's really been doing Sonya stuff. And I haven't played Wild in a while, so I haven't had to worry about Dark Glare doing crazy things in Wild. But yeah, I mean, these changes, like, looking at them, I agreed with them and think that they're good changes. And if it just means that the game's healthier, even though that they're slowing it down just a little bit, that's just something I'll have to deal with, because I generally like playing fast decks, but Discover Hunter isn't necessarily fast, so I think it just fits how I'm enjoying the meta right now. So, yeah.
How about yourself, DragonRider? I know you've been seeing it in THL, if anything.
Yeah. I was going to mention Hunter as well. I still think Hunter is doing well. I know people were kind of playing it before the patch, but because of Worlds especially and stuff, it kind of got popular. Asteroid Shaman, as you mentioned, definitely coming around. Definitely have seen a dip in Dungar Druid. And I think the other one that I've heard about is Death Knight. I think there's still a decent amount of Death Knight people talking about, like, Plague DK and stuff too, specifically. So, and I think that's partly because of how it does versus Asteroid Shaman. So there you go.
So, yeah, I mean, that's enough on the patch. It was small, very targeted. They didn't want to have another situation where Edwin Van Cleef runs rampant while everyone's on vacation. So, Blizzard team is Team 5, I believe. I just saw a tweet from Hat saying AFK notices are up, or out of office notifications are up, and I think they're all off. I don't know if it's like everyone takes the holidays off, or Blizzard shuts down, or how that works. I know I used to love working that last week of the holidays when I was, at other jobs, because I have no meetings. I can work on the things that I want to work on and actually accomplish things, and maybe check off things that have been on my to-do list for a long time. But so I don't know. It sounds like the whole Team 5 is off. I don't know if it's like just Blizzard says, yeah, we're closing down or whatever, but it's good for them. They deserve it. And I hope that the meta just stays kind of chill, and people aren't tweeting at them all Christmas. And if you're going to tweet at them, just tweet them something nice. The meta will be dealt with in January, and we'll be fine from there. We're not that far from StarCraft, and that'll be fun. So, last week we did talk about Worlds a little bit. We talked about the final matches and stuff like that, but we actually have one of the casters here. Dawn, how did you like this year's competitive World Championship?
It was exciting. I mean, I think last year was exciting for a different reason. And also last year, well, there was a couple things that made last year exciting that are different from this year. So last year for 2023 Worlds, obviously we had Pocket Train, who's an incredible player, incredible person. That was very exciting. I know he's been on this show. You guys had him on after he won Worlds and became the champion. And it was also a point when, like, there was a lot of reservations, I'll say, about if people, if we were even going to have any sort of competitive system going into 2024. So, myself and some of the other casters and some of the other people were kind of like, let's make this the best we can, because this literally might be the last thing we ever have. So last year was really exciting. This year was also really exciting, but it was really exciting because, first of all, we had China back. So we had the China players who were amazing. They brought different stuff. It was exciting to, like, have that again, and kind of that discourse of, like, okay, here's what the Chinese players brought versus what, like, the Americas and Europe players brought. And that's always really cool to be able to, like, talk about the differences and see how those differences actually pan out in terms of like lineups and how they pair up against each other. So that made it really exciting, but also it was actually pretty exciting because we had a decent mix of like decks and lineups overall. So it definitely felt like, even though we kind of were able to come up with a little bit of like, okay, you know, kind of rogue versus shaman, that was kind of like the big debate of the weekend, right? It was like, you know, where does everybody stand in terms of like, is rogue the big bad guy? Is shaman the big bad guy? You know, how do you feel about the rogue versus shaman matchup specifically? You know, how were they doing, which they didn't do as well, statistic wise in Worlds. They didn't have the greatest win rates, but it was really exciting to get to like look at that. And then even within each class that was brought, there was difference in what decks were brought. So it didn't feel like there was kind of a like clear cut decided upon like, okay, this is obviously the best, you know, rogue deck, or this is the best shaman deck, or this is the best, you know, whatever. Like everybody kind of had differences. There were differences in lineups. There was differences with all that. So that was really exciting. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it this year.
And I feel like we're in the same situation that we were in 2023, where there was a lot of uncertainty going into the next year, but it didn't feel like it was the highlight. Like last year, it really felt like, is YouTube going to save us? What is Microsoft going to do? All those questions still linger, but it doesn't feel like that was the main storyline this year, because I think we're just kind of numb to it in some way. But it did feel like all the casters, once again, towards the end, were like, if this is our last broadcast, we love you all, and this was great and all that. Do you really get a sense of that? Well, with your fellow casters and whatnot, or?
Well, we were like kind of asked, since it was the last broadcast of the year, to kind of say something as like, hey, like, you know, kind of shout outs and say closing thoughts kind of thing for the year. So if that's what you're referring to, especially like I know for me and Edelweiss, when we were on for the last, like we were on together for our last time for the broadcast. So we kind of did our final shout outs and like, you know, thanks for having us on this year and stuff. But I don't know if anybody caught it, but at the very end, right after the finals, they did say, we'll see you next year. So that's what we can say.
All right. Well, you hear it here first. Bread and Butter has the scoop. Esports coming back. Dawn guarantees it. So speaking of Dawn guarantees, we have had her on multiple times over the years since we started. Constant. I don't know. You've probably been on at least 10 times, if not more. And we have these little lessons, these little, 101 classes or 200 classes or whatever like that. And we figured now that we've gone through a full year, why don't we review some of the lessons we learned this year from you and, just kind of touch on them to, remember what we learned and use them for our resolutions going to 25 in regards to Hearthstone. So, Dawn, take it away.
All right. Thank you. So yeah, I went back through and just double checked everything that we had kind of talked about in terms of like these lessons, as you mentioned, these kind of like intermediate building blocks that I was kind of calling them at the beginning of the year. So to recap the categories or the topics real quick. So in 2024, we talked about hand reading, definitely an important skill. We talked about adjusting to new metas. We talked about the like math, all of the different kind of math that you have to do in Hearthstone. And we talked about matchup knowledge. So that was kind of the premise of this year. If you are maybe newer, definitely recommend, like especially newer to Hearthstone, go back through the podcasts that I was on the podcast episodes, I should say, where I joined you all in 2023, because we did do kind of the basics. We talked about resources. We talked about like just playing cards, how Hearthstone might be different in terms of your turns than other card games. We talked about a lot of that. We stepped it up this year. So if these topics were a little much, then go back and listen to those. But yeah, just like a little review, I guess. Hand reading, again, an important skill. There's quite a lot to it. Definitely things like deck tracker, like Hearthstone Deck Tracker can help you, or Firestone can help you if you're kind of wanting to look at those. But hand reading is an important skill, especially for Hearthstone, where you cannot. I guess they did print one card, which I have never ever seen used. They did print one card this year that does change the order of the cards in your hand. But other than that,
I've generated it. I've generated a few times where it's just like, okay, and I played it. I'm like, oh, what just happened? Oh yeah, that card does that or whatever. So
yeah,
it does because I think one of them. I think it's Spellburst, right? There's a Spellburst there that does it. So it's like you generate it from cheese, and then you play a spell, and your hand moves around. You're like, oh yeah, that's the thing.
Yes. So outside of that single card that they printed after we recorded the hand reading, I was like, really? Just recorded that hand reading episode, and then they came out with that card. I was like, no way. But outside of that particular card, there is no way to like shuffle your hand or reorder the cards in your hand. So it is definitely a skill that you can use in Hearthstone to actually kind of track your opponent's hand. If they generated something, you can kind of know exactly where that is in their hand. If they're getting coins, like has been popular in multiple decks throughout this year, I would say, like, and even maybe last year, like Big Spell Mage was generating coins at one point, right? Like, and zero cost cards. You have like Rogue and even Mage, and another Mage deck was doing that. Rogue is definitely the more recent one. It's generating a lot of coins.
Shaman too.
So you can kind of,
Shaman too.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
And you got a priest card, right? Is it no hunter card? Cash cow. Let's go. Lots of coins.
Oh yeah. Yes. Forgot about the cash cow. Oh my gosh, how could I forget about cash cow? Amazing. But you know, looking at things like that, definitely an important thing to do. And as I mentioned, in Hearthstone specifically, there's no like hand shuffling or reordering, so you can track that stuff a little bit easier, kind of look at things they might have been holding since the very early parts of the game, or things they kept in the mulligan. You can track that and use that to make your decisions. Anything else you guys want to add on to that before we move on to the next one?
I've actually found myself doing this a lot more, and just kind of like keeping an eye on what they have on the left and trying to figure out like, okay, so why would they keep this? What is in their hand they've kept this long and all that. So it's helped a little bit. I'm not always right, but you know, sometimes I am, and it definitely helps to kind of plan out plays. So I think it's a valuable skill.
Yeah, it's like I'm not great at it by any means, but I definitely, a feature I do like about Hearthstone Deck Tracker is it tells you what turn a card has entered your opponent's hand. It'll be 0 if it's something they've kept from the mulligan, and then it'll go 1 through whatever for the rest of the game. But it's just a tool and a resource and a skill you can use to learn, like, oh, maybe they're holding a bomb that they're waiting to like play on a specific turn. So I'm gonna try not to make us jump into another thing, but like matchup knowledge, like knowing matchup knowledge can help with like reading hands. So like if you know what a specific archetype plays and you know your opponent's playing that, you can assume if they kept a card in their hand from the beginning of the game or very early turns, and now it's like turn like 6 to 9, you're like, okay, they have some kind of massive like bomb spell or creature that they're going to play, and you have to take that into consideration and prepare for it.
Oh, I love all the magic terms you use.
I'm
Fantastic.
sorry. it's so on the brain.
It's great. This is anybody who might be like OG Hearthstone. If you might recall, at the very beginning of Hearthstone, you could always tell who played Magic and who got into like their card games with Hearthstone, because everyone that would say creature instead of minion, you're like, yep, they're from Magic. Yep, they're from Magic playing Hearthstone. All right.
Yeah.
No, as someone who likes a lot of card games, I find it funny, and it's something as a caster, especially, like I really try to force myself to really like use the correct terminology for the game, because yeah, didn't mention this during my like what I've been doing outside of Hearthstone, but also been playing a lot of Wild Hearts TCG, which is a new TCG that's coming out in 2025. So definitely been enjoying that, and I want to cast that game as well. So something I've been looking at. But speaking of adjusting to new things, how about adjusting to new metas? Which also we have to do when we have patches and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. There's a balance patch. You got to adjust to a new meta. There's a mini set or an expansion that comes out, and you have to readjust every time. Sometimes, I think especially like we're currently seeing a bit, and I feel like this usually happens a lot in the later part of the year, like usually the third expansion, because we have the most cards in the pool of available cards for standard. There's kind of what feels like a revert to like older decks and archetypes that were popular. Every time we have a new patch or something, it's like, okay, everybody just like goes back to kind of what we had before. So sometimes you might not have to adjust as much if after a bounce patch or something like that happens, and you can kind of play something that you played before that you might be more familiar with. But if you're looking to play new stuff, or if a whole new expansion comes out and you're kind of trying to adjust to those new cards, the new metas, the new archetypes that might be present, or especially after rotation, I would say that's usually a big one, because the core set cards change, or cards that you might be used to playing with rotate out of standard altogether, and then you're like, well, I can't use this card that I'm used to playing with now. So, or you don't have to play around it. You don't have to even consider, is my opponent holding that card in their hand? Because it's not even in standard anymore. So things definitely do change, and there's definitely a skill to being able to adjust very quickly to new metas. Some people find it much easier. Some people find it more difficult. And part of that does tie in with matchup knowledge. So I think we're going to kind of tie a lot of these to matchup knowledge, which I'm kind of going in reverse order of how we talked about these this year, which is kind of why I did them in this order, right? Because I think matchup knowledge was like the very first thing I wanted to cover in the year, so that as we talked about this other stuff, you could tie in matchup knowledge to like, okay, how does it help you with all of this stuff? So, adjusting to new metas can be challenging, or some people, again, find it a little bit easier. I myself usually find it a little bit more difficult, just because I'm a player that I like kind of more solved, like old, stale metas. Like those are my favorite. I'm like, yes, because I am a player, like I know the play patterns, right? I'm like, okay, they're going to do this on turn 1. I do this on turn 1. They do this on turn 2. I do this on 2. And then by turn 5 or 6, this happens. And I kind of know the patterns of what's going to happen in the game. And I can adjust if those play patterns don't pan out as I think they will. But for me, I definitely need more of like a stale, slower meta that I am very familiar with. So for me, adjusting to new metas takes a little bit longer. How about you guys?
I think when we talked to McBannerface, I might be wrong. I think it was McBannerface, but he basically said when new meta changes, just play old. Don't play any new cards. Just play old decks, because everyone else will figure out things, and the old decks are refined and they'll win, and people are trying things. So play what you know. And I think that's like what you're saying too about when metas change, people kind of go back to old decks. That's because a lot of times, like I know me, like when I have a deck that I like, and then something kind of pushes it out of the meta, but I like playing it, but I can't play it anymore because I'd see like 30% of Druid, and Druid kills the deck that I'm playing. And then a nerf happens to Druid, I go back to playing the deck. Like, I don't know, Asteroid Shaman right now. When I like a deck and it goes away and I have an opportunity to bring it back, I do. But the funny thing is, I like Handbuff Paladin, and Handbuff Paladin's really good right now, and I haven't played it. Because Asteroid Shaman. But but that's what happens. A lot of times the meta changes. It's like, even on rotation, like if there are decks that, a lot of decks lose key cards when we have a rotation, which is coming up in April or so, but not every deck. Some decks maybe lose a card, maybe 2 cards. And if you want to climb, like Is it more fun to play the new decks? Absolutely. Do you want to have fun and play the new cards? I'd hope so. But if you just want to win games, play the old decks. That's just gonna, get you there for a while until you find out who the new king is, and then you go to that. How about yourself, Doc?
Yeah, I usually play something that's just like old and refined. A thing that I started to do because my buddy Tom Locke or Brandon Downs on Twitter used to do is when a new expansion would come out, he would just play Zoolock because Zoo is usually just always good, or was in like the slightly older days of Hearthstone. Like no matter what, you could throw some random Zoo package together, and Warlock was just such a low to the ground like value deck where Zoo was just like it'd get there in matchups you didn't think it should, just because it was just a very refined archetype and it was just very simple to play, and you would just play it and it was so fast it would usually just push out new things. So I kind of try to do stuff like that. Like a memory I have specifically of doing that is someone sent me a salty friend request and was not very happy with me that I was playing Zoo in a new expansion. And all I said back was, my daddy said this deck was very good. But yeah, like there's nothing wrong with playing something, when a new patch happens or whatever. Cause like you're just hedging your bets for yourself, playing something how to play against a field that's changing and could be different, but very likely could be relatively similar because not everyone plays the decks that get nerfed, right? So like the field by and large stays similar-ish unless some crazy like card got nerfed that was pushing a bunch of stuff down, then the field can change dramatically. But Hearthstone's been doing a great job, and so changes like that don't happen too often. So like you can expect to see some slight changes, but if you play something very well using your matchup knowledge, you'll be fine. So I think it's fine. It's fine and fun to do that. I've definitely enjoyed doing stuff like that because sometimes, especially with what you do, it can be kind of degenerate. And I like degeneracy in Hearthstone.
I've done that too, especially when before I hit Legend or before I hit Legend consistently, if like the meta changed and I could play some very consistent aggro deck and gain ranks, I would do it, because, the time to play new cards right now. Let's get some ranks, baby. So, it's fine. Play what you want to play. It's your game.
Yep. And if people have a problem with what deck you're playing, that's not your problem. That's theirs.
Yeah, it's a big them problem.
Yeah. Especially as somebody who's very like competitive focused and enjoys watching and really kind of analyzing the like high level play and stuff, I am not somebody who judges at all for playing what you think will win at any point. Even if it's not a deck that people enjoy playing against or appreciate seeing, if you think that deck is going to win, bring it, baby. Bring that deck. Speaking of decks that people might not appreciate, how about decks that require a lot of math? There has been a lot this year, I feel like. A lot of like OTK style decks, a lot of damage from hand. We've seen a lot of crazy things with even some of the like aggro decks, right? Like setting up kind of Swarm Shaman in particular, setting up those boards to give yourself the chance to Thrall's Gift into Bloodlust, right? Like, you need math. No matter if you're playing an aggro deck, a control deck, an OTK deck, Lanessa Paladin, where you got a bunch of stuff in your hand, you got to do this big combo all in one turn or something. There's a lot of math involved. And this is from the very basics, like calculating how much mana you have and what cards you can play with that mana that you have each turn. That's math. It's might be like simple basic math, but it's still math. Up to lethal math. I know in the episode where we talked about that, we definitely talked about lethal a lot. We talked about always like counting. That was I don't remember where it started. It might have started actually kind of originally in Magic and like that community, but it translated over to Hearthstone very, very well. and kind of the acronym that a lot of people used was ABC, always be counting, right? Like, always be counting. ABCs, math, the ABCs of 1, 2, 3s. Always be counting and calculating how much mana do you have, how much, what lethality potential do you have? What's the probability? We talked about this in the math episode, like the probability of drawing a specific card if you're looking for a certain out, or that, like, if you have 2 cards in your deck, 2 copies of card, and you have 10 cards left in your deck, right? You have a 2 out of 10, you got a 1 in 5, a 20% chance to draw the card you're looking for, versus if it's earlier in the game, much lower probability. So that's definitely involved. And these can go across multiple card games, but Hearthstone, I think, is just a really good example of like how many decisions there are and how many things you have to calculate for, like, on a constant basis. And then I think the other thing we talked about as well was hand size, like always be kind of calculating and accounting for your hand size and hand space. If you're going to draw 3 cards and you're at 8 cards in hand, you're going to overdraw 1. So you got to always kind of be counting your hand, doing the math there. What do I need to maybe do in a certain order to be able to like play out these cards, then have the mana left over to play this card that then draws me more cards so I can clear up space in my hand, but do I have enough mana to do all that? And, there's just a lot of math involved in every single decision. So honestly, I forgot, again, this has been a year of all years. I was reminded by my good old friend Dankestad right before we got in the recording for this, that episode was in fact this year. So he's like, what about the math episode? I was like, no, that wasn't this year. That was 2023, right? Nope, it sure was not. That was this year. So yes.
And I'll tell you right now, even so, a deck that is good that I've struggled to be good at is Lanessa Paladin. And a lot of times what happens is I'll play my turns and I'm like, I gotta go. And I'll get Lanessa down and I'll play, Old Manager, and I'll play all the Divine Brews. And then more than once I have gotten to the point where I'm trying to play my 1 mana glow sticks, or glow whatever they are. The 4 manas I could reduce to 1 when you play a holy spell, and it's like you're out of mana, because I just was going, playing as fast as I could, and the client hasn't caught up to me yet, and I'm like, oh, I'm out of mana. I'm like, oops, I messed that up. So you got to kind of, I got to be better at this one particularly, but a lot of times I just kind of say, I think I have enough, and I go with it.
A deck that has been hard for me in the sense of keeping, like, and it's made me very diligent about knowing my hand size, knowing what's going to be added to my hand, is Discover Hunter. Because I live for the turns where I have both of the Discover and Extra Copy cards out on the battlefield at the same time, and just try to generate like the hyper value train that I see in my head. And it's like, oh no, I now have 10 cards in hand and no mana to open up any space. And then like, oh, there goes King Plush. Oh, there goes Strangleheart. Oh, there goes a Hollow Hound. There goes Ziliax. I just love the discovering so much. It does something to my like card brain monkey brain, or card game monkey brain. And I just love just trying to discover as much as possible. It's also helpful if Tide Pool Pupil is in hand, because then it like adds the layer of, okay, which of these cards do I want an extra copy of, because I'm going to be discovering an extra time. It's just, there's so much. There's been so many games where I'm just like, oh, well, I messed that up very bad. Like burning discovered copies. Like it's just, it can get crazy. I live for those turns because they're just funny value stuff. And we all know already I like playing for like ultimate value, and it's not usually the right decision in how I do it, but it's the fun decision every time. And I just try to discover fun stuff. It's just keep track of your hands. You get up to 10 cards.
Yeah. All right. The last one that we've mentioned several times already, kind of in relation to the other topics, but that's matchup knowledge. And, overall, it's just learning different matchups, learning the kind of stats, or at least the general, like, how does this deck do into the field at large? Or how does this deck do into specific matchups? How does, this deck in particular do versus this specific deck? And kind of maneuvering the decisions that you might make in terms of mulligan, in terms of how you play the matchup. The same deck, sometimes you want to play the deck a little bit more aggressively, or sometimes you might want to play it a little bit slower, kind of keep the opponent's board clear, and kind of wait things out a little bit, build things up, make value trades. I think specifically in terms of like making value trades and board trades, Ziliax was very good at that, which is why we just saw that particular change where it doesn't give the added health now, so that Ziliax decks. I feel like I should specify the pylon, right? The pylon specifically version of Ziliax, because that was the one that gave +1/+1. So you could make value trades, stay on the board, set up for things like Bloodlust, or set up for Zarimi power turns, or just be on board. But knowing kind of those decisions and kind of how you might want to play those matches out in definitely specific matchups is very good to know. You don't always, I would say, depending on the level that you're at, where you're playing at, you don't always have to have like the most in-depth knowledge of like, okay, my deck plays at an 82% win rate against X deck, and a 57% win rate against Y deck, and only a 49.2% against Z deck. Yes. You don't have to go that in depth unless you are, I would say, like at those very high levels. That's when you really want to be a little bit more focused on like actually figuring out that particular matchup. And if you have heard any of the like very high level players, I mean, obviously they play a lot of ladder, but the competitive players specifically, when they're prepping for worlds and stuff, they will spend hours and hours sometimes doing literally the same matchup over and over and over, figuring out how they can play that matchup differently, or getting a bigger sample size, right? Of if I play Swarm Shaman into this Cycle Rogue that we talked about a lot of worlds, for example, how does that matchup go? Does it favor one of them over the other like 80% of the time? Is it a close matchup? What does that look like over more sample size? So matchup knowledge is a really interesting one, because I think it can vary so widely in terms of like how you use it. Math is always going to math, right? You always have to be doing the math and calculating and counting. But matchup knowledge is a little bit different. And even at the high levels, you can ask, right? I think like Sottle mentioned it a lot during Worlds, like depending on who you ask, like if you ask the Rogue players, they're going to say Rogue's favored, right? If you ask the Shaman players, they're going to say Shaman's favored. So even at the very high levels, there's not always like 100% agreement on specific matchups. So that one is a little bit, or a lot more nuanced, I would say, of a like topic and idea overall. And that one, you have to do a lot of practice and prep and kind of paying attention to the stats a little bit more than you would with like maybe adjusting to a new meta, for example.
Yeah, for me, it comes mostly down to the mulligans, honestly. Like it's like how you play the game. And it's like, well, I know what they're doing, but it's like, if I have a hand and I'm like, oh, I have Boldy and I have Shutterblock and I have Incendius, it's like, well, I can't keep it because I'm playing Demon Hunter, and I know Demon Hunter is going to try to be super aggressive, or I know it's Warrior, so maybe I have time to do that because they're probably going to be a little slower right now, and this will benefit me more. And a lot of times I overgreed when I think I can, and I usually to my detriment, but it doesn't. I do try to look at the matchups, and that'll change how you mulligan, because you don't mulligan the same way. Like if you're playing Druid, you're probably not keeping the something that clears board early unless Treants are popular, and you're more worried about trying to get quickly get in there quickly because you know they're just going to try to ramp, at least this current iteration. So yeah, I mean, you look at what the matchup knowledge when you play a lot, and the more you play, the better you'll be at figuring out matchups, and that's really kind of the key there, is just to kind of understand, hey, this is the deck I'm playing, this is what I'm playing against, I'm the beatdown, I'm not the beatdown, and just try to react there and use the tools you have in your deck to get the best advantage you can. Doc, how about yourself? I'm sorry, Doc's chewing on something. He's
sorry,
got,
my fiance was making cookies for tomorrow, because tomorrow's Christmas Eve. But yeah, like there's the example that I always fall back to on matchup knowledge. It's not from this year, it's from last year, but it's with Shockspitter Hunter. I played so much Shockspitter Hunter that like I just intuitively knew, oh, okay, well, this matchup, like I can like I just dig for my weapon, or I throw the Shockspitter away. I just knew, right? Because I played not a lot for a lot of people, but it was a lot for me. I played like 150, 180 games with Shockspitter Hunter over 2 months, which for me, especially at that time, that was a lot of Hearthstone. So I just knew it was like, oh, I have the time to slow down and play the value I'm going to trade you out games until I can combo. It just, if you like a deck and you jam it a bunch, you'll learn the matchup, you'll learn the matchups, and just like know how you can play it. Because not every time you're going to be able to do the thing your deck wants to do the way you want it wants to do it. There's going to be a decent number of times where you're going to have to fight for every inch of value. You're going to have to give your deck enough time to give you that one setup turn that you opened up in the matchup because you were playing the deck a little differently to be able to go and pop off and do the thing, which you can only know how to do with the matchup knowledge from just jamming the game, seeing what happens, reading guides, like going on HS Replay and reading the Mulligan guide, reading like the stats on cards that are kept and whatever, just to give you like the extra percentage points each turn in making more and more optimal decisions before you can just do your pop-off turn to set you up for the win.
All right. Well, that is our year in review. Looking forward to, do you have any insights on what topics we might be talking in 2025, or do you want to keep those a little closer to your chest right now?
That is part of what I will actually be planning. I'm actually doing, I guess, again, something. Look, I'm cutting back. Okay, I'm not doing as many things, but I'm still doing a lot. I'll be doing like a whole 2-day, like planning not resolution, but like planning sort of productivity sort of. I forget what exactly is being called, but it's basically over 2 days, the first weekend of the new year. So I'm going to be planning a lot of stuff, and that is on my list of things to plan out for next year. So definitely, if any listeners have ideas on things that they want to hear about, any topics or ideas or concepts in Hearthstone, in particular, definitely would love to hear those as well.
Fair
yes,
enough.
Please.
So, Doc, that was a lot of information, but I think I have a little room for dessert. What do you think?
Yeah, dessert sounds pretty good. So, listeners, please leave us a review. We prefer 5 stars because it helps with visibility. But give us whatever you feel like we deserve. Let us know the good, bad, the ugly, how we can improve the show, what you're liking about it, what you're not liking about it. If you leave us a review or send us an email, we'll read it out on the show. Because we want the show to be the best it can be for us, but also the best it can be for you. So thank you, listeners who have left us a review in our 2 years of doing this show. And thank you to all the future listeners who will do the same. So, Dawn, we have a new question for you.
All right.
What is your favorite December holiday tradition?
I think I'm going to say opening stockings on New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve. Usually do the stockings and stuff the night before, and then the regular wrapped presents and stuff on Christmas.
Heck yeah. Tito, how about you? Because I don't think we've asked each other this question.
Fair enough. I don't really like have much that I look forward to except seeing my kid open gifts on Christmas morning and the joy that comes with that, and then just kind of like every year the way our holidays work are different depending on schedules. We live a couple hours away from people, so like we already this year we've already seen my parents on Sunday because of just how schedules worked out and all that. So I love watching my kids open gifts and just the joy that brings. How about yourself, Doc?
So I kind of have two. So there's a tradition that we've started with my fiance's family where we just sleep at my mother-in-law's house on Christmas Eve. Like we're all kids again, especially this year because Cortland's youngest brother Colin moved out and is living closer to his college. And so by and large, my mother-in-law is an empty nester. And so this is one of the days of the year where she gets to have all of her kids at home and sleep in the house. So just kind of special that way. And a thing that I did when I was younger, we called it Christmas Commandos. And it wasn't necessarily like something we do on Christmas Eve or Christmas, but what it was is we would make like goodie baskets or care baskets for people. And we'd ding dong ditch them, but leave them with this goodie basket on their doorstep. And it could be as simple as like, it was like a movie night in a basket or whatever. So like a couple DVDs, a couple bags of popcorn and some candy, or it could be, we baked a bunch of cookies and we're giving you the cookies and ding dong ditching you, stuff like that. Just remember being a very young kid with my siblings and my mom in the car, just dropping stuff off on people's porches and hitting the doorbell and running as fast as we can to get in the car to drive away. Not something I don't think anyone else does. At least I've never heard of people necessarily doing that other than my immediate family. It's just a fun thing. I grew up in a very small town, so like you can get away with stuff like that and not have to worry about like any serious repercussions because it was just all in like good fun and everyone kind of knew everybody already. But yeah. Dawn, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on social media. I am at DawnieDK, DAWNIEDK on Twitter. And I'll plug them anyways. I promise the shows are coming back. We're just on like holiday hiatus, really. But you can also find me talking standard Hearthstone specifically at the Doctor 3 HS podcast. And you can find me talking about card games in general and a whole bunch of different card games and strategies and like deep dives into topics like the ones we covered. And talking with Dankestad and Ron Mexico over at the TCCG Roundtable.
How about yourself, Doc?
Yeah, you can find me on Discord and Blue Sky at Doc McButt.
You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever. If there's someone I'm not there, you want me there, let me know. Tito Santana HS, DragonRider. You got anything to promote this week? Or shoutouts?
Yeah, shoutouts for sure. As always, I gotta shout out you two. Thank you so much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure, always a blast when I'm on. Always have such a good time. I love doing these topics and just talking about this kind of stuff in general. Like, I don't know, breaking down the topics and like concepts and stuff. Like, I don't know. I'm a big old nerd and I just love it more than playing the games. Like, I just love talking about this kind of stuff. So it's always a pleasure. And you know, I'm gonna do a shout out as well to the Wild Hearts team. The devs and people working on the game over there are truly amazing, wonderful people, and it has been very awesome these last couple of months, like getting to know them, learning about the game and what they've been, you know, putting together over the last several years that they've been working on, that they're finally getting ready to release out into the wild of actual physical cards and get those into the hands of people. So shout out to them and the community that they're building over there.
How about yourself, Doc?
Yeah, first and foremost, Don, thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you on. It's always fun to talk with you. And I think this is the first time we've had you on since I saw you when I went to Nebraska, which that was such a fun time, and I'm glad we got to make that work.
Yes.
And listeners, thanks to y'all, because y'all help make this show worth doing. And it's nice to know that we have people listening to us talk about Hearthstone in a way that will help educate people that are either starting their Hearthstone journey or looking to like improve how they play card games. So thank you. How about yourself, Tito?
Kind of the same. Dawn, always thank you, and all our regular guests, and all our new guests, and all our one-time guests. Everybody just love talking to people, and some of the feedback we've gotten is people just love the fact that we talk to people in the community and bring that community, that Hearthstone community, together. And you get to hear from people, and you get to know people, and it just brings this like tight-knit community a little tighter. And that's one of my favorite. That's why I love doing this podcast, is we get to talk to awesome people. And it's so much fun, and we get to learn things, and I think we just get, a better community. But anyway, guys, I think we're toast. We'll see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.